Hey there, Eric Chessen, founder of Autism Fitness, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take a concept, a practice, a strategy, something that we use in autism fitness programming to great success for our autism and neurodivergent life skill athletes, and bring it to you in a way where it is workable, usable, and can generalize to the individuals that you serve. And of course, before I get started, well, not of course, it may not even be obvious, but hit the subscribe button, and then it boosts the thing on the algorithm, and then more people see this information, and then more people can utilize this information and bring fitness, meaningful fitness that is, into the lives of the individuals that they serve, of course, of any age or ability level. And in this edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, I am going to be talking a little bit about comparing and contrasting different forms of exercise, something that is not always immediately apparent to everybody. And to start off, everybody is going to have their biases, not necessarily in a bad way, because everybody, if they are physically active, has their thing that they like to do best. And of course, that is going to sometimes cloud our perception or understanding of what works optimally as well. So the first thing I'll say is, as far as exercise and physical activity, as long as everything is safe and scalable, there really is no bad physical activity. So there are very few physical activities that are going to have a net negative result for anybody. Of course, in the extremes with physical activity, regardless of what we're talking about, in my case, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where my face gets ground into a mat on a nightly basis, thus resulting in slight cauliflower ear. Anyway, that's one of the, I wouldn't even call it a negatives, but maybe I'm a little bit more susceptible to those types of injuries on a regular basis. But when we are talking about this at a base kind of fundamental, this is what I like to do from a physical activity perspective, and now we're talking about this with respect to the autism and neurodivergent population, there are some important things that we need to discuss, again, comparing and contrasting different types of physical activity. And by the way, a lot of this is on, I'll put it up here, this is our physical activity comparison chart, exclusive to Autism Fitness, and I'm giving this to you for free so you can take a look at it. If you want a copy, email me, eric@autismfitness.com. I'm happy to send it over. But it compares different types of physical activity, some of which appear to be very common in day programs or schools or other organizations that serve the ASD community. Now, we're going to compare and contrast three different types of physical activity. We have strength training, so that is the type that we utilize the most in autism fitness programming because it's going to have the highest amount of generalization or carryover into activities of daily living that can be verified, that can be demonstrated, plenty of research on that. Then there are sports and games. These can be non-competitive, competitive, quasi-competitive as well. And then we have more what we could call low impact activities like yoga or chair yoga. And again, to start, it's not that any of these are necessarily bad, but we do need to hone in on exactly what the actual, real, measurable, validated, proven benefits are of each, and why, spoiler for this, why strength training needs to be the basis of physical activity if we're talking about generalizing it to safety, independence, and quality of life over the long term. Now, let's start with sports, and I've spoken about this a lot. There are plenty of other videos on the YouTube channel I've written articles about this, the sports conundrum. So if we're looking at this from the perspective of the PAC profile, the physical, adaptive, and cognitive, there are certainly some benefits, but a couple of definite considerations with sports. Number one, from a physical perspective, and again, I've done longer form videos specifically just on the sports topic, and it's also in the Autism Fitness Pro curriculum. Sports are finite, right? So the skills that someone develops in soccer or hockey or football or basketball or baseball or tennis or bowling do not really generalize to activities of daily living. Why? Because they are too specific to that particular sport or activity. So for a clarifying example, when we go back to those different sports, hockey or basketball or football or baseball, any of those, I think I just named some in the latter that I didn't list in the former. Anyway, a lot of those athletes in those different sports will all strength train because they are getting stronger and more powerfully and moving better generally. And this is going to, in many cases, elevate their sport-specific programs because they have more power, they have greater strength, they have greater endurance. But you see that all of these different types of sport-specific athletes are doing strength training as a general modality. It may be specified to their particular sport or activity, but they all will do strength training, or it's much more prevalent in those sports now. So if an individual is into a particular sport, or I've had several athletes who just like an aspect of that sport. What do I mean by that? I've had athletes who just like shooting a basketball into a basket. It doesn't mean that they want to play basketball. It doesn't mean that they want to do it competitively. It just means that they like this particular aspect of this particular sport. So sports are not bad. They are just very narrowly focused by way of what they are. Represent a particular competitive or quasi-competitive activity. So a sport is great for getting physically active, maybe for socialization, but is it going to get our life skill athletes stronger and more prepared for activities of daily living? No, just by way of how specific those movements in that particular sport are. So the other part of sports from an adaptive perspective is you may have an individual who is not highly motivated to engage in that sport because that's just not their thing. That's why not only different, personality types, but also different body types gravitate towards different sports. I am short. Basketball is never going to be my thing. If I like it, great, and I can play, which I don't. But even if I were interested, my physical limitations, as far as my height and probably my coordination as well, wouldn't enable me to be highly competitive in that or have great success. And great success is not the marker of whether you should or shouldn't participate. It's just that choosing one sport for everybody in a group to do is really limiting. What you're going to wind up having is the smallest percentage or a much smaller percentage of the individuals who are motivated to participate. And then, of course, from a cognitive perspective, the speed of gameplay, the rules, time, the overwhelming chaos of gameplay can also infiltrate that participation as well. I have a whole video about this called the stopwatch test. It's how much time is that individual actually participating in that particular sport. If you're doing it for half an hour and they only throw the ball or kick the ball 3 times, are they really doing the sport? But I digress. Let's move on to what we could consider low impact activities, such as yoga or chair yoga, which can be very popular in programs for the autism population. However, we need to ask if this is optimal, again, for developing those strength, stability, and motor planning skills. And the reality is that no, they aren't. Can it be a calming, enjoyable, and passive activity? Sure, but if we're talking about developing strength, it certainly does not do that, because not all physical activity is the same. It's not all just physical activity. It's not all just exercise. That's like saying, well, it's all just food, so it's all good. Different foods have different macronutrients, different caloric counts. So we want to take into consideration what the modality is and what it actually does. I'm not saying that yoga is bad. I'm just saying that yoga for a population is not necessarily going to build strength. And sometimes the issue is, well, we don't think that our individuals in this program can participate in strength training. Simply not true. We just need to understand how to scale those programs and those exercises for each member. So to say they can't do it is a misunderstanding or a non-understanding of the scalability of resistance training programs. We should be able to progress and, even more importantly, modify any particular exercise that we are incorporating into that program. So when we're talking about more low impact, sure, it's low impact, but is it actually providing the outcomes that are going to be most beneficial for our life skill athletes? And in many cases, it falls far, far short, no pun intended, of providing the athletes with what they really need, or the individuals with what they really need, in order to get stronger, in order to become more efficient, in order to be safer, in order to initiate more in their daily lives. And it's not to say that you can't also include sports or include yoga or include hiking or include biking in a strength training program. It just means that the strength training is the foundation of this, because that, apart from anything else, by far and away, is going to provide the greatest potential and eventual generalization to those life skills. All right. So again, different modalities are fine, but we can't exclude strength training by saying, well, we're doing yoga or we're doing jumping up and down on the trampoline, because these are not the same things. There is something out there called exercise science. That is the science of studying, validating, and understanding what different types of exercise stimuli, what results or what type of changes they have on the body. And certainly resistance-based training is going to get the body stronger. Very difficult to argue that point. It just needs to be done safely, effectively, scalably, and correctly for our neurodivergent and ASD athletes. And that's why Autism Fitness exists. So again, there is a substantial difference in different physical activities. And if that's not immediately evident, there is science certainly to back it up. Autism Fitness programming is all about resistance-based training, because this is going to have the highest generalization to activities of daily living and is going to provide the greatest quality of life over time, and is going to be the most inclusive way for participants to, well, participate. Again, if you want a copy here of the Autism Fitness Site Certification, that's where we work with a school or an organization to help you establish and optimize your fitness or adaptive PE program. If you want this copy of the Site Certification comparison chart, email me, eric@autismfitness.com. I'm happy to send you a free copy. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen. I just said that twice in 2 sentences. Leading the movement for movement. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below. What do you think? Do you want to debate this? I'm happy to do it. Or does this kind of galvanize something that you're already doing? If you'd like me to cover a different topic or a very specific topic in a future edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday Training, leave that in the comments below. Would love to know what you think. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Oh, I already said my name. I said, yeah, founder of Autism. I got it all. All right, cool. Thanks again.